Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cisco Modeling Labs CML Free. This is our office hours for September 2025. I want to open up and let you all know that all of your questions can be submitted using this QR code. So I want to give everyone a moment. Go ahead and scan this QR code and start having your questions head our way. So, quick agenda of what we're going to go through. I want to introduce you all to our CML team, and then then we'll have a poll come out of where you're located. We'll follow up with some CML announcements, and then we'll start answering our questions you all submit live. Also, I want to let you all know if we do have members of our team in the chat of this meeting, if you type it there, as well if you're watching over on YouTube. But we do field the questions from the Q&A submissions first. So to let you all know, this is our team for Cisco Modeling Labs. I am Leslie Greenup. I'm the technical marketing engineer for CML. Next to that, you see Dalton. He is on this call as well. Everyone with a star by their name, by their face, is on the call currently. John is our leader for engineering, and Tom is our software engineering technical leader. Justin and Ralph are not here today. They're actually working on something else, but they are on our team. Ramal is the support lead for CML. And we also have Joe Clark with us today, that is a distinguished engineer. So, really quick, let's start with our polling questions. I would like to know, what country are you joining us from? Oh, we have France, Hong Kong. I want you all to see this because we have people typing so you could see it pop up because I think it's pretty cool. Kenya, Mexico, we got Nigeria, Turkey, Canada, Venezuela, Singapore, India, Argentina, South Africa, Nepal, Hong Kong, Quebec, Germany, and the US. So we have a couple of new countries that weren't with us in August. Continue to go ahead and start putting that information in there. Let us know where you're joining from. Some CML announcements. We actually have CML 291 coming soon. This is going to take care of some of those issues that we have seen or you all have sent over to us. Also, just so you know, if you have not registered, go ahead and register for our October, November office hours. And also, we got you all access to some available trainings, free Cisco U training. And thank you, Carlo. He put that link in there for you all to register. And we have a new upgrading to CML 2.1 video that was created by Joe Clark that is available to you all as well. So now I want us to go ahead and get us started with some of our questions that we have submitted. Okay. Do not hesitate. Put in anything as simple or, I don't want to say complicated, but sorry guys, I'm gonna say complicated. But put your questions in so we can have the guys answer them for you. All righty, let's go ahead and start seeing what questions we have. All right, question one. What's the best path for a packet tracer user to get comfortable with CML quickly? We're going to have Tom answer that for us. Go ahead, Tom.
Yes, if anybody's coming to CML, especially if you've used another network simulation tool, but you're trying to get used to the user interface and how CML works, there is a intro to network modeling with CML learning path on Cisco U. We can drop a link to that. I'll enter that in the answer here in the text, but that's probably the best place to start. You can grab CML free. You can go through that content. It's available for free. You just need to log in to Cisco U. If you don't have an account, you can create a free account, and that content would be available to you. By the time you get through that, it'll show you sort of the core workflow of creating a lab and creating the network topology for that lab and starting it and interacting with the devices in that lab. And I think by the time you're done with that class, you'll have a pretty good grasp of all the kind of core features of Cisco Modeling Labs.
Thank you for that, Tom. Our next question that we have is for Dalton. Are there currently any plans to expand available device images to CML free?
Perhaps. Yeah. Well, we're thinking about this. I mean, we're polling the CML free user base now, currently trying to understand, which reference platforms are useful. The goal of CML free is really to kind of cater to CCST and CCNA level certifications and labs that might entail the devices that we shipped with already. But if there's other devices you'd like to see in there, let us know. And keep in mind, you can import your own devices inside CML free. So you're not just limited to what we ship with. You can bring your own.
Okay. Our next question, could Cisco bundle ready to run certification and skills lab and CML free be used to shorten time to success? Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. We pseudo bundle this, let's say. So if you go to and I'll when I answer the question in text, I'll put in the link and I could put it in the chat. But we have a GitHub repository we call the CML community. Within that, there are several topologies under, there's a folder called lab-topologies, and under that, there's a CCNA-prep folder. And in there are several topologies. So two of our engineers, Hank Preston and Patrick Dragano, have created an episodic type of approach to preparing for the CCNA. Most, if not all, of those topologies are geared towards CML free, meaning they will run within CML free. And in CML 2.9, we added Git integration. And we added the CML community as a default repository. So when you go into the sample labs in CML 2.9, it will pull those labs in and you can spin them up. So they're not directly bundled, meaning they're not shipped as part of CML, but they are integrated. So if you have that internet access, and for CML free, you should have that internet access, you'll be able to pull in those sample topologies. You can start them up. They work with the node definitions that ship with CML free. And you'll be able to practice some things for CCNA. And if you're not interested in the CCNA directly, you'll still be able to use those sample topologies as a way to get started and a way to get going with CML.
Okay. Thank you for that, Joe. Our next question is coming from Hanan. Is it possible to emulate SD-WAN scenarios?
Yeah, I pushed this one over and I answered it already. I'll take it. So the short answer is yes. CML has the ability. In fact, SD-WAN is unique in that it is one of Cisco's key architectures that is fully modelable or simulatable or virtualizable, whatever a word you want to make up, in CML. So you can think of our approach to SD-WAN as that true digital twin. However, it is only available in CML Personal and higher. So you would have to move up to Personal or Personal Plus. It's also available. We ship all of the node definitions for SD-WAN, for the manager, the validator, the controller, all of that with those paid subscriptions to CML. So you move that Enterprise Education, Personal, Personal Plus, you'll get the SD-WAN nodes. And provided you have the resources, One thing about SD-WAN, that architecture, the manager in particular, the kind of the GUI and the API cornerstone for SD-WAN, it's a big node definition. It requires 8 CPUs and 32 gig of RAM, and it really wants that to run. But if you have that and you have one of the paid subscriptions, you can absolutely do a full SD-WAN fabric with all the policy, with all the cool load balancing and failover. Everything you would do in production with SD-WAN, you can do in CML.
Okay. Thank you for that information. I feel like we have Joe, didn't you create a video on that? I
I
feel like
did. So
okay.
not only do we have all the node definitions, if you know anything about SD-WAN, it's a beast. It's not something that you can kind of provide a sample topology for, a static sample topology for. It requires a lot of special hand holding because of the way it spins things up securely and uses certificates. But there is a open source Python utility that's in GitHub that was created by some of our TAC engineers, I believe, some of the Cisco TAC engineers in the SD-WAN world. It's kind of like a push button for SD-WAN. So I did a video. I think it's in our video library. It should be in our video library. If not, you can find it on YouTube. That you can just run this script against your CML environment if you have the SD-WAN images, and give it a little bit of time, but it will get that fabric fully, a basic fabric fully spun up, and then you can start playing with it and doing whatever you want to do with your SD-WAN.
Okay. Awesome. I believe that's on the videos on Cisco Learning Network or on YouTube as well.
Yep, I
But
think it's in our video library. Tom's very good about adding stuff like that.
okay, perfect. So you all can find it there. Hanan, if you want to look there, you'll be able to find that video. Our next question, can we use ACI? I'm assuming they're asking can it be used within CML?
Yeah,
Any of the guys want to take that one?
I moved this over and then I'll shut up. I'll stop talking for a while. This is one where I have to deliver some bad news. We get the question a lot, so it's absolutely something people are interested in. But the way the ACI team, the way they provide testing for ACI isn't the same way that you see with things like SD-WAN or traditional route switch. They've created a separate product for this. They call the ACI simulator. Essentially, it's an appliance to. They may have a virtual form factor at this point, but traditionally it's been an appliance like a UCS server with an 8-bit controller or two in there and a few spines, a couple spines and a few leafs. And it's all encompassed. It's all in that box, meaning there's no external data plane. There's nothing to integrate with CML. And there's nothing that, even if you put it as a node, even if there was a virtual version of this and you put it as a node in CML, you wouldn't be able to do anything with it with other CML nodes. So there is a way to test ACI. It's called the ACI simulator. It's unfortunately not something that we can integrate with CML.
Okay. So let's switch it up on who we're hearing from. This one's for Tom. Are there any plans for CML for Mac OS? We get this question a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had the ability to run it there. So you'll notice that Cisco Modeling Labs is essentially a network simulation platform. We distribute it as a OVA or an ISO. What you're installing is essentially an entire Linux system, and then on top of that, we run Cisco Modeling Labs. So when you're running this on Windows or Mac OS, you'd be running it on like a VMware player or Hyper-V, or for Mac, VMware Fusion. But all of the Cisco Modeling Labs, all of the virtual machines that Cisco produces, the iOS V, iOS XR, NXOS 9000, the Cat 9K, all the SD-WAN, Catalyst SD-WAN images, like all these images are all x86 64 based virtual machine images. So those things will run on like a x86 64 Linux virtual machine. Since Apple has gone entirely over to their own Apple Silicon, to the ARM-based silicon, that you can only run that sort of x86 64 Linux virtual machine in sort of an emulated mode. And unfortunately, when you're doing nested virtualization there, suddenly things become very slow. We've talked about doing like a lightweight CML for Mac OS that would be still a virtual machine. It would just be running the containerized images, but then you'd have a big disconnect where sort of the containerized images, things like IOL, things like the the little some of the little host nodes that we've released, even the like Splunk forwarder, those would all work. But then if you try to add like the x86 64 virtual machines, like the Nexus 9K or anything, that would not, or it would run so slowly that it would just be unusable. So we haven't gone that direction yet. Really, it looks like there's no chance that Mac's coming back. I have a Mac here, so I'm also sad about this. But yeah, at this point, we don't have plans to do anything specific for running on Mac OS. Your best bet is to buy like a little, I don't know, Intel-based NUC or AMD-based sort of small mini computer thing, and just have that as a separate dedicated CML instance.
Okay.
I should
And
also mention,
oh,
and
go
for
ahead.
people who are adept at it, we don't have, it's not sort of supported currently like a thing you can just purchase, but you can take your CML license and instead of deploying it to your own machine, you can deploy that to the cloud. So we have like Terraform scripts that if you can set up a working Terraform environment on your local machine and you have an AWS account, you'd have to pay for the, it's going to not be like the little easy free tier instances, but you need like a bare metal kind of deployment in AWS or Azure. But there are scripts. There's a link to it from the CML documentation. It's the Cloud CML repository. There's scripts for spinning up your own CML instance and applying your license and just running it there in AWS. So if you can't run it on your local machine or you don't have enough hardware, that's an option. You're just having to also pay the cost for that cloud compute that you're using.
Thank you for that, Tom. I've seen a couple of questions come through about I've submitted for licensing. I haven't heard anything or things of that nature. We need more details around that. So I'm going to have one of our moderators post our CML info mailer. Shoot a email to that. So if we need to look into the details around that, we can. Okay. Our next question is CML free the same as Packet Tracer? And also, do we have additional CLI command on it, as a lot of commands are not accepted in Packet Tracer?
Yeah, I can jump in and answer that. I guess Joe might have additional things he can add. No, these are completely separate products, separate applications. Packet Tracer, basically, it's a software model really designed to be super lightweight. You run it locally, and it's geared around that CCNA Network Academy sort of content. So anything that's within that content, they've built like software like models of like how the devices should respond and do things. That means that they're just accepting exactly the commands that they know are covered in that Network Academy content and making sure the answers are all correct. But they can make that really lightweight because that's not really like actually iOS running there. That's like some separate code that's kind of pretending to be that and responding and trying to give you the same answers. But once you get outside of that content that they've programmed into those models, it doesn't work at all. It's not the actual operating system. The difference with CML, like I said, is it's a network simulation platform. So it's not just a simple software application you deploy or that you install on your machine. You're actually deploying like a Linux virtual machine with our software running on top with virtual machines running inside of that. So each of the devices for your topology are either containerized processes, or they're like a Docker container, or they're virtual, like actual full-fledged virtual machines. So the CML, or Cisco, has taken the actual operating system, the same like iOS that they build to run on a router or a switch. They've cut that off at sort of the layer where it would normally hook into the hardware and the ASICs, and they've built like a virtualized hardware layer. So it sits on top of and runs as an x86 64 virtual machine, and that's how the iOS thinks that it's running on an actual like routing platform, just there's a hardware abstraction layer there that they've built so that it can run as a virtual machine. It always has like a fixed hardware platform. The nice thing is that basically everything that's implemented in software in something like iOS or iOS XE for the corresponding virtual image that you're getting, that is the same software. You will see the same behavior, you'll see the same bugs. Cisco TAC internally uses CML to reproduce customer problems, because if it's a bug in sort of just the software and the control plane or the command processing, it's going to be the same bug if you have the corresponding version of that platform in CML. So yeah, it's much better sort of fidelity to the actual devices. It still won't get you all the way to the hardware. Like we said, something like ACI is not supported because that's kind of not just a pure software feature in NXOS, but anything that's kind of purely software, most of the control plane, a lot of the management plane, even some of the data plane stuff has been implemented as sort of a software stack there. So you'll get a lot closer to the actual device functionality for all the commands and things that you want to run for the virtual machine images that you get with both CML free, and if you purchase CML Personal Plus, you'll have an additional set of virtual machine images that you'll get for like Nexus 9K, Cat 9K, iOS XRV, and again, those are all sort of similar to they're based on the actual software, that's the same version that's running on the actual physical devices. Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Jim.
Trying to find my mute button. You covered it really well. I mean, that's it. Think of packet tracer like the holodeck on Star Trek. You're going to hit a wall at some point because it's not a real image, whereas what CML runs are the real full software operating systems. As Tom said, you might hit some hardware walls, but generally all the commands are going to be supported, including advanced things like programmability when you get onto things like the Catalyst 8000V. Now with IOL in CML free, you're not going to have the full as much of the feature set, but that is a full iOS XE image that you're able to play with. So you do get the real packets being generated, the real feature path of the devices.
Thank you for that, Tom and Joe. Andy has submitted our next question with a smiley face. Any chances to up the limit of nodes for CML free? He specifically said 7 to 8.
Yeah, we're looking at that. I'll answer that one. So CML free's been out less than a year, so we're still trying to get feedback on what is useful, what could be improved. If you want to give us some feedback on why 7 to 8 would be more beneficial than 5, that'd be really helpful. We've considered increasing the node limit, but we have some work to do to kind of determine if that would be, or determine which kind of limit would be acceptable kind of for both our group and for the free users. So possibly in the future.
Thank you for that, Dalton. Our next question it looks like Tom, you answer this one for us. Is CML free the same as Packet Tracer? And will it have additional CLI command?
That's the one we just answered. I'm sorry, I haven't marked that.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's go to Bob's. To clarify, can you import Cat 8000 or Cat 8000 or 9300 images into CML free?
Yeah, I can answer that. So Cisco Modeling Labs in general, like I said, it's a network simulation platform. Part of what you're purchasing is for CML free, you get certain things out of the box. If you were purchasing something like CML Personal, you'll get additional ISO image, like a bundle of reference platform images. So things like the Cat 8KV, the next gen firewall images, that's WAN images. You get a bunch of different images, and license to run them on, or not license, but a permission to run those on Cisco Modeling Labs. But CML can run third-party images. It can run images that we don't distribute. Anything that runs as a QEMU KVM virtual machine on Linux KVM hypervisor, CML can generally run that virtual machine. If it's an x86-64 virtual machine that runs on Linux KVM, you can probably get that running in CML. So before we started distributing, for example, with Cisco Modeling Labs, the next-gen firewall images, they worked, and we had no definitions for those that defined how, if you had access to one of those images, you could bring it into CML. We have similar things on the CML community site. Maybe somebody can drop that URL in the chat. But on CML community, there's a list of no definitions for third-party images for, I don't know, big IP firewall devices, or I don't know, some Arista things, some open source images. Like, there's a bunch of different node definitions, and the node definition is what tells Cisco Modeling Labs, like, hey, I've got this virtual machine image, and here's how you need to kind of provision the virtual machine to run that image. So if you kind of can interpret the information about how to run that virtual machine and get it into Cisco Modeling Labs, that should work. If you have access to the Cat 9KB, the Cat 8KB, you can certainly grab that image and bring it into CML. You just need the Cat 8K node definition for it. I can't remember if that's on the CML community, but it's pretty easy to create. The Cat 9300. Yeah, I mean, like I said, any of these images that's built to run as a virtual machine, x86 64 VM, you should be able to get running in CML, and CML will be able to connect it to other devices, pass packets, grab packet captures. All the features should work. Once it can spin that up and get you to the command line, it should be fine. And CML free does not limit that feature in any way. So you're still limited to the 5 nodes, but yeah, any images that you want to bring in there and add, you can do that at this time.
Thank you, Tom. Our next one, we're going to go back to Joe. Can we use CML for 98 controller and register physical access points? If so, is there a video link for that?
Yeah. So this is actually a pretty cool use case. You absolutely can do it. And I've been meaning to do a video on this I got a couple 9166 access points at home where the Cat 9800 can do both what's called local mode switching, where you tap-wap encapsulate the traffic back to the controller, or it can do the Flex Connect kind of the drop off at the local switch port. So I'll do a video on that next couple weeks, hopefully, and we'll post that in our library. Something else, we've been internally working on things around wireless. So stay tuned. I think you're going to hear a lot more interesting things wireless related. But yeah, this is one of the cool, if you've got the 9800, we don't ship that with CML free. It's with Personal and Higher, any of the paid subscriptions. If you have it, you can absolutely do that if you've got some physical access points lying around.
Awesome. Patrick has our next question. Can I use CML free in an academic environment? This would require us to install CML free on multiple computers in a classroom, correct? Dalton, are you able to take that one?
Yep.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry, I was on mute.
It's okay.
Yeah, you can do that. We do ask that all the users that you have sign up for CML free sign up for CML free, even if they're not actually downloading it. But yeah, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Dalton. Let's go with the next question. Dalton, I know you have to step away for a customer meeting. So, are there any plans to increase the max node count for CML Personal Edition?
Yeah, I'll answer this one, then I've got to run. Yeah,
Okay.
CML Personal, that supports up to 20. If you need more than that, then we do have CML Personal Plus. That one supports up to 40. Right now, we don't plan on changing those node counts.
All right. Thank you for that answer. And we know you got to step away. Appreciate your time, Dalton. Let me continue. Need to clear this out for us. This next one, it's saying that they're preparing for the CCIE. There is CCIE lab practice for 4-hour sessions, but they want to know if CML Personal Plus has CCDNAC, SD-WAN, and others like FMC, ICE, WSA, and ESA.
I can jump
Oh,
in here.
thank you. I was just
You
about to say,
want?
Joe.
Okay. So Personal Plus, you got 40 nodes. Plus, you've got all of the node definitions we currently ship with, including SD-WAN, including FMC, and the firepower firewall, the next gen firewall, the firepower, not the management console. Oh, why is it skipping? Anyway, you have the NG firewall. You have ICE as of 2.9. WSA and ESA in our community, and I posted the link in the chat a little while ago. We have no definitions for WSA and ESA there. We're not shipping with them by default. So if you have access to the images for WSA, ESA, we have the node definitions, and we know they work in CML. Now, SD-WAN, SD-WAN I already talked about. Yes, you've got that. DNAC or Catalyst Center. Technically, it works in CML. If you have there is a official virtual form factor for this. It does support the KVM hypervisor. It will run in CML. This is a beast. If you thought the SD-WAN manager and its 8 CPUs and 32 gig of RAM was a beast, this is ultra beast. This is, I think it's like 64 CPUs and 256 gig of RAM. Or it's just 32 CPUs, but 32 CPUs, 256 gig of RAM. So if you have access to Catalyst Center Virtual, you could try to load it in CML. And theoretically, if you've got the resources, it will run. We recommend that you have this as a separate thing outside of CML, even if it's the virtual form factor. That way you can keep it spun up all the time, because it also takes a long time to bring this thing up. So independent of your CML topologies, but connected to CML through external connectivity. That said, we are not shipping with Catalyst Center by default in CML, so you would have to have this some other way. The other thing you mentioned here, the 4-hour practice session. So we are doing $50 practice lab time. You can rent a rack essentially for your CCNA or CCIE prep. So you could do that to get your Catalyst Center kind of exposure, and then the rest you can do in CML with your SD-WAN. I don't know how much is FMC or firepower related on like CCIE enterprise infrastructure. Certainly with security, there's elements of that. ICE, there's elements of that. And obviously WSA and ESA are security focused. So you could do all of those within CML. You can also do just regular Catalyst 9000 V things within CML. So like I think EEM used to be on CCIE enterprise infrastructure. That you could practice. You could practice the programmability aspects with the Catalyst 8000 V. So you could do your netconf and your restconf and your Yang-based protocols. So there's still quite a bit you can do, a substantial amount you can do CCIE focused in CML. Just DNAC or Catalyst Center, not by default. And even though it could work, we would recommend you didn't.
Thank you for that information, Joe. I'll take the next questions. Are there any plans to give Cisco Neticat instructors a paid version of CML free? So we're actually working on a few initiatives with Cisco Net Academy. So definitely stay tuned for that information, as we have something, a few items coming on the calendar for you all, for the instructors of Cisco Net Academy. I guess this is more of a statement instead of a question. Host machines being removed from device count. Do we have any explanation as to why that currently is that way?
No, I mean, that was just a decision to keep things super simple for CML free. It does limit it in some ways. For CML personal, there's a set of images that are considered not metered. So even though we say it's a 20 device count, if you purchase CML personal, you're kind of getting more than 20, because if you have a Ubuntu node in there or a server node, like some of the images that we bundle, we don't count those toward your node limit. There's a list on the site. But for CML free, all of those would be counted. And that's part of that sort of offer reevaluation that Dalton was talking about. I don't know what our status is there, but that's currently, like I said, the way it is counted on CML free. Every device other than basically your external connectors or your unmanaged switch are counted in CML free toward that 5-node limit. CML personal is different. There is a list of post node basically devices that would not be considered part of the 20 node count.
As Tom and Dalton said, we are listening to your feedback. We've seen a lot of questions come in, some of which are duplicate of that theme of can you increase the account? And we're listening not just for the request for that, but also like what is the use case? And one of them that I saw here was prepping for certain certifications. Yes, you might need more nodes. So we need to find out what the right balance is and what that means for the tiers like personal and personal plus. But we're not ignoring you. Just stay tuned. We're thinking about this and trying to come up with the right answer.
Thank you for that, Joe. Our next person, it looks like it's for you, Tom. They're asking about they've completed one of the courses. Ooh.
Oh, sorry, did I just
Yeah,
move
you
that from
cleared
your?
it was asking about using CML with Windows 11 or Windows 11 Pro.
Right. So basically, the issue comes down to so last year Windows made some changes in kind of how the Hyper-V extensions work. It's kind of messed with our standard way of deploying. Like I said, Cisco Modeling Labs is when you're deploying it on like a laptop or a local server, you're running it as a virtual machine. So it's a Linux VM, and then inside of that is all the network simulations and the CML software. On Windows, normally you deploy that on in the past in VMware Workstation or VMware Player. Windows made some changes that now kind of make Hyper-V and VMware kind of fight. So if you have Windows 11 Pro, then it has Hyper-V. You can run into some trouble with trying to disable the virtualization extensions for Hyper-V, and that causes the VMware Player or Workstation to not work well. We do have the instructions for deploying CML on Windows 11 Pro as a Hyper-V virtual machine. So instead of deploying CML onto onto VMware running on your Windows box, you just deploy it with Hyper-V, and that we think works. We don't have that like in our full testing process, so it's currently a separate set of instructions on that CML community, but we do have those instructions for deploying to Hyper-V, as well as other VM hypervisors, like I think the instructions for like Proxmox are out there. If you're running Windows 11, Ramal will have to correct me, but I think that with Windows 11, it does not include the Hyper-V extensions, or the Hyper-V feature, and because of that, VMware actually works fine there. And I think that we've been able to deploy with VMware Workstation, VMware Player on Windows 11 non-Pro edition. But then if you're on the Pro edition, you won't be able to use VMware. You need to use Hyper-V deployment. I think that's the correct answer right now, right, Ramal?
Actually, so if Windows, if you are on Windows Pro or Windows Enterprise Edition, it comes pre-installed with Hyper-V, and yeah, in that case, it's much easier to deploy CML in Hyper-V using Hyper-V. So we have the documentation in the CML GitHub community. I've answered the same question multiple times in this call in the chat. Yeah, so if you are on Windows Pro or Enterprise, definitely try the Hyper-V first. But if you're using Windows Home, your only option is to use VMware Workstation. And for VMware, using CML in VMware Workstation, you may need to modify certain settings in Windows, like also in the Windows registry. So those instructions are also available in the CML documentation. So we have a FAQ section in CML documentation. And inside the FAQ, we have a section called troubleshooting, and it is the question number 12 that describes about the troubleshooting steps. So, so many users had success following those instructions, but as you may imagine, like each system is different from one another. So you may face challenges. You may have to try different settings, like even yeah. So the known troubleshooting steps are documented in the FAQ. And yeah, please try it out.
Okay, thank you for that. And then we have, in addition to Osmond's question, I can't reference Osmond's questions to see what it was. Um, does it mean FMC, ICE, FTD, etc. are only available on version 2.9 of CML?
No.
Right. So
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
yeah, I was gonna say for CML free, of course, the like I said, the images that are available don't include those. So with CML Personal Plus, you'd get access to FMC, ICE images, FTDV. If you have access to those images and want to pull them into CML, you can. Again, you'd need the node or image definition. Whether or not a virtual machine image that works with CML 2.9 works with CML 2.8 depends on whether we had to add any specific features to 2.9 to support that virtual machine. So on occasion, like one example in the past, we had some virtual machines that required multiple like disk images to be assigned to it, and early versions of CML 2.3, 2.4 didn't support that. We had to add that feature. So those virtual machines suddenly became, supportable in CML once we added the feature to have multiple different disk images. So there are certain things that with an older version of CML, if you see a new version get released and we start bundling a virtual machine image or making that image available, it might only work with that version. But often, actually, we've been running it, or we've been making it available, like the node definition, in previous versions of CML, and we just finally got the permission to actually distribute it as part of your CML purchase. So for CML personal users, they get a list of images. Over time, we've worked with the other groups at Cisco to ask them to let us distribute their demo versions of their images with Cisco Modeling Labs. So FMCV, FTDV, I know for sure those things have been working for many, many releases. I can't think of a version where we've tried them that they didn't work. Certainly since CML 2.4 or something, I think they've been working fine. ICE, I don't think there's anything special about ICE other than the fact that it's a gigantic virtual machine. So in general,
actually, we did add the ICE is one that does require 2.9 because we did add the X4 FS support for day zero configs. But FMC and FTD, thank you, FTD, that's the acronym or abbreviation I was missing. Those were introduced in CML, I think, in either 2.7 or 2.8. So they should work in older versions.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, fellas, for that one. So it looks like these next two questions kind of go together. So how is Cisco addressing compatibility issues with AMD chips, Apple Silicon, and the VMware Hyper-V conflicts? And the follow-up was, could offering VirtualBox or Hyper-V ready images improve accessibility for more hardware types?
I'll jump in some of this because the short answer is, so one of the guys who's not here, Ralph Schmieder, he would say, think of CML like a DVD player and the images that it runs as the DVDs. Someone else in one of our internal communities said, think of CML as the superhighway and the cars as the images. However you want to think of it, there are two players in this. There's the CML team, and we produce CML, the orchestration layer, the network fabric, the automation layer, like the REST API, the GUI. And then there are other teams within Cisco who produce the reference platforms, the IOL, the Catalyst 9KV, Catalyst 8KV, SD-WAN, so on and so forth. Cisco is focused very heavily on x86-64 as an architecture. So we haven't heard of any immediate ARM plans for some of these virtual form factors. There just hasn't been enough, I guess, business requirements to port to the ARC64, the ARM architecture. Now, your question about VirtualBox or Hyper-V or other hypervisors, QEMU itself, if you don't use the kernel extension, it comes with an emulation mode, and it can emulate on x86 64 machines, or on ARM machines, I should say, on ARM machines like a Mac laptop. It can emulate the x86 64 instruction set, and you can run processes, applications, and executables in that. And, it does okay. And I've played with things like UTM, which wrap that on Mac OS. And process applications, they do okay performance-wise. CML is a different thing. CML, this team could produce a native set of executables and binaries that run natively on ARM64, on the ARC64 architecture. And CML as a GUI, as an API, as the fabric, the various binaries behind it, they'd run very fast and natively. The problem is when you bring in a virtual machine like the ASAV or like the Cat8KV, trying to run that under emulation, it crawls. And I've done it. I've tried to get all of CML free running under emulation. It takes a long time to come up, and the ASAV, as an example, since it is a virtual machine, takes an hour on my M4 Mac to actually start. So even if we included these other hypervisors or emulation layers on top of Mac OS, we're not going to be able to deliver a product that would be worth using. We need that focus from other groups. We need to see ARM as an architecture that gets priority there to really make something viable on that. And so what Tom said earlier about the Nook or one of these cheaper small form factor PCs is something to run CML on, that's really the best answer.
Yeah, or cloud.
Or cloud.
Yep.
Thank you for answering those two. Next question. I'm currently preparing for the CCNA certification. Could you recommend the best lab environments for hands-on practice and any reliable dumps or study resource to help me succeed?
Well,
So,
first of all,
go ahead.
I'm gonna jump in on the last part. You should not be using dumps, period. And the reason is because you're cheating yourself. If you're going to get the certification, learn the material, get comfortable with it, practice it, and then get the certification. Now, on the practice front, that's where CML really plays well, because you look at our CCNA exam blueprint. You look at tasks like troubleshooting, configuring. You look at analyze, these active tasks like not the describe or the explain. Those are things you can practice in CML. And if you go to that CML community link and you look at that lab topologies folder, you're going to see subfolders there for, like I mentioned earlier, the CCNA prep, and you're going to see, I think, a CCNA contest folder. Those all have not only sample topologies, but exercises, things for you to do to help you practice your skills. And one of the other things that we're going to be, that's already available, we're going to be talking a little bit more about. You probably heard of this thing they're calling AI. There is a model context protocol, or MCP server, that we've built for CML that you can tie into tools like Claude Desktop. And you can ask in very simple language, build me a CCNA lab in CML to help me practice X, Y, and Z, OSPF, switching, static routing, whatever it is, and it will build you sample labs, and it will grade your work. It can actually go through and grade how well you were able to do those labs. So again, we'll be talking a little bit more about that, but there are a lot of resources already out there, some more static resources in our community to help you practice for that CCNA certification.
Thank you for that, Joe. This is a pretty broad question. Ramal, you could take this one. I tried downloading CML but had an issue with my email. Does it have to be a work email to download it?
No, no. So actually, you just need a complete Cisco profile to be able to download CML. So that you can provide your work email, and you can also uh, provide your personal email. That shouldn't matter. So the main most important thing is that your CCO profile should be complete, especially the address part. So recently earlier we had issues where users failed to provide a complete PIN code of their location address. So that restricted them to download the software. So make sure that your profile is complete with all the details, and you should be able to download CML. We also have those instructions in our CML documentation. CML free, if you go to the CML documentation and search for CML free, you will see the instructions for downloading CML. Yeah, just follow it. Should work.
Thank you for that, Ramal. Our next question, it looks like we have 8 minutes here, so I'm gonna try to get us through 4 more questions. Um, I want to simulate EVPN using BGP VPLS. Can I do a lab using this?
Yes, I think he clarified later. He's talking about using IOSXRV, like the XRV 9000. So again, CML free, that image is not included if you have access to it, or if you purchase CML personal, you will have access to the IOSXRV 9000. It runs in CML. It's a very big image, but it does run. It looks like the latest version does support eVPN. So any of these questions where you're thinking about, does this work in Cisco Modeling Labs? CML itself, like Joe was saying, it's the record player, it's the highway. So we don't there's very rarely do we have bugs where CML itself is blocking some protocol or something that's happening in the simulated network itself. That's usually a function of what those virtual machine images themselves support. So we do provide links back to the documentation. The teams that we get those images from do update the features that their virtual machine images support over time, often. So certainly you can look at what versions we're distributing, what that corresponding documentation says about the feature support. It looks like eVPN is supported on XRV 9000 at this point. And certainly, yeah, BGP should work. I think VPLS, I think, works. Yeah, but that's like I said, it's not a function of CML so much as we do the same thing that I'm telling you to do. You can go to the CML documentation, look at the VMs for CML, or you can go directly to Cisco site and look up the documentation for the iOS XRV 9000, or look on the sort of more general CML community pages, and you'll see people talking about it, what features are supported, and that's essentially the same thing we do. We go back to the teams, we go back to the documentation, and just say, oh, okay, this virtual machine image does it support these features. But yeah, I think everything you talked about there.
Things I want to add, Tom. Yeah, so as Tom said, yeah, first and foremost, check the version of the image. Imagine you're trying to simulate Nexus 9000V. Check the version of Nexus 9000V which you have in CML. So one other thing to note is, like, each time we have a new release of CML, there is a chance that we also bundle a new version of the image. So first make a note of the image version, and go ahead and check the release notes of that particular image. One other thing to notice, like, there will be two set of release notes for some images. Like for Nexus, like, there will be a separate documentation for the physical Nexus devices, and there may be separate release notes for the virtual version of that image, right? So make sure that you're referring the release notes of virtual version of the image.
Thank you for that. Oh, we already answered this one. Our next question, can we integrate Cisco ICE hosted on CML with Entra ID and Intune or other cloud PKI services?
Short answer, yes. Anything, so the ICE we ship with CML is a 90-day eval. Anything you can do in ICE, you can do in ICE and CML. You just need to allow for external connectivity to the ICE node. what we mainly encourage people to do with ice is more labbing, not trying to do full type of production things, because ice does require, we don't ship with the form factor that is, ice comes in a few different sizes. Like there's, I think, small, large, extra large, or something like that. I think we ship with the small or the demo form factor. So very limited resources. So we don't tell people, try to pack everything you need into the ice deployment in CML. Just focus on like the a feature, couple features you're working on, and then maybe you spin it down, spin it up for other features. But if that's what you want to do and you can do that in ice, then you can do it in ice and CML. Whether or not, now I don't know if Intra ID or Intune actually work with ICE, but if they do work with ICE, they'll work with ICE and CML. You just need that external connectivity. I do know I've integrated Duo with ICE, so I know that Duo works, and Duo works with ICE and CML.
Okay, and then one more, it's pretty straightforward question. Does CML free support nested virtualization?
Well, it's kind of a straightforward question. What I was saying earlier is that if you deploy CML on something like Windows, you are using nested virtualization to run your network simulation. So CML is a Linux virtual machine, and then it uses nested virtualization to then run VMs inside of CML. If what the person's asking is whether the VMs that run inside of CML can themselves run nested virtual machines, yes and no. I think it's, as you get to additional layers of nested virtualization, there can be some performance issues. I think it works better if you've done a bare metal deployment of CML. We also had some issue with this about something about the KVM settings for certain things causing problems with this in the past. Yeah, give it a try. If you hit problems, post your specific use case and like what virtual machines you're using and what you're trying to do with them, and then that'll be more clear. If you're just talking about can you deploy CML as a VM and then have the VMs running it, that's the normal way of deploying CML. If you're saying you want to run VMs inside CML that themselves also run VMs, yes, that should work. There may be some problems there because that's not sort of the primary use case CML users usually are tackling. But if you run into any problems, certainly let us know. Yeah, we can help out. Post to the CML community, or if you have a tax reported version of CML, open a tech case.
Okay, and thank you everyone for joining this office hours. We appreciate all your questions. To follow up with this, we do post the recording as well as you'll see a discussion post with all the questions and answers as well, documented. So if you have a search community, it will come up for you. At this time, please take a moment and scan the QR code and give us your feedback on this. We definitely want to know if you enjoyed this type of session. Was it helpful for you? Would you recommend it to somebody else? And we hope to see you all in our next session on October. I lost the date, it was in front of me.
23rd.
23rd. Thank you. On October 23rd. Thank you all, and you all have a good day.